There's a myth going round town that when you get older you just sit down and start rocking. Just rocking. In a way that's true if you know what I mean. Just take a look at the senior scene. Well, it's rocking. Yeah, it's rocking. We're pulling our weight, learning the code, clicking our heels, sharing the load, and every so often we're hitting.
Greetings and welcome to In Praise of Age. And we're so happy you joined us today because we have a very special program. We have Dr. Stephen Halkiotis, who was county commissioner since 1988 until he decided not to run again for re-election in the last election. And Steve, you always enlivened all the commission meetings, and you're a great friend of aging, and we're so glad to have you here.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, but I need to start by correcting those dates.
I'm sorry.
You took away 2 of my years. It was 1986.
86,
so I actually spent 20 years doing that, 20 enjoyable years and sometimes not so enjoyable, but it was fun.
I'm sure that's true. You came to North Carolina from Boston, is that correct?
Little town northeast of Boston, Haverhill, Massachusetts, on the banks of the Merrimack River. Came to graduate school here in 1967. It was either going to be Chapel Hill, Texas, or Kansas, and I obviously chose the right place.
Right. And you got a doctorate in education, is that correct?
No, actually my PhD's in Latin American history. Then I went back, didn't tell anybody I had a PhD in Latin American history, and got certified as a school administrator in the School of Education.
Oh, that's unusual.
That's very unusual. I've done a lot of unusual things in my life.
Did you do anything with a Latin education?
Well, I had one article published in the North Carolina Historical Review on gun running to Cuba in 1895 out of Wilmington, and had a book in progress, and all that's been put on the back burner from 20 years ago, but I might take it back in now and start taking another look at it.
So you're going back to some things that you had much earlier.
Yeah, I'm actually purging the house now of the archives from the county commissioner work, 20 years worth, with my wife's urging, and we're starting in the bedroom and working down to the garage. Then we have an outbuilding to go to. So I've got about 2 years worth of purging. As a history major, I never threw anything away. I actually had every county budget for the last 20 years, every piece of deliberative material for 20 years.
You really have everything archived.
Yeah, well, I've always believed in saving things, you know. Good historians save things, so I tried to be a good historian.
Imagine what the recycling you are going to expect.
Oh, yeah, I was shattered 2 weeks ago, as a matter of fact, because I've been religiously separating white paper from mixed paper. And they told me that...
You don't need to anymore.
No, you don't. They throw it all together in one bin, and I was crushed. I was literally crushed. I didn't know if I was going to survive that information, you know, but I'm handling it. Actually, my recycling is going faster now.
Good.
I just go, chung, chung, chung. I throw it all in the same box.
Well, that's one way to clear it. I'm afraid I have a lot of that to do myself, but it feels good when you do it.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great catharsis going on.
Exactly. So when you came in the 60s, what was Orange County like, or Chapel Hill, wherever you lived?
Well, Eastgate Shopping Center was it. And you had to go over to Durham. There was a big Belk store downtown. And there really wasn't a whole heck of a lot. If you wanted bagels, you might go to Fowler's downtown and you would find frozen bagels, Lenders out of Connecticut. That was it. There were 1 or 2 pizza places in town. That was it. It was a different ballgame.
I came in 75, and I can remember being on Franklin Street one day when I was approached by this young man who asked me where was the nearest bagel shop, and I said, New York City.
Well, you were right.
And I think it probably was.
I mean, the biggest thing back then, I remember going down to, I think it was called the Carolina Grill, and they had a belly dancer down there Thursday nights.
Oh.
And, you know, we were in graduate school, and we thought that was really cool because I hadn't seen anything like that since I left New England. But Chapel Hill was kind of a laid-back little town, and there wasn't a whole heck of a lot going on.
So you didn't go back to New England. You stayed here.
I stayed here, yeah. I kind of liked that. You can cook out year-round. You don't need heavy boots and a big heavy hat and gloves and earmuffs and everything else. Snow shovels and snow tires, and I didn't like that all those years I lived in New England. It was too cold. I kind of liked this place.
Now, did you go directly into the Orange County schools, or were you in another system?
No, I was, when I was writing my dissertation, I got a job teaching history, Latin American history, interestingly enough, at Orange High School in Hillsborough. And the principal there encouraged me to go into school administration, and college teaching jobs were getting kind of scarce back then. And I wanted to stay in the area, so I thought I'd try it. And I stayed with it. I enjoyed it. I liked working with young kids.
So you did that 20 years maybe?
I did that. Actually, I was a teacher for 5 years and assistant principal half of those 5 years, and still taught 90 kids and was part-time assistant principal. They didn't have a lot of money back then. And then I became principal. I was director of a race desegregation assistance center in North Carolina for a year, out of the University of South Carolina in Columbia. Came back as a junior high principal for 2 years, a high school principal for 15 years, and then I was director of auxiliary services for another 6 after that.
Wow.
So I gave them 32 years of my life, and I thought that was enough. I needed some for myself, and off I went.
Now, why did you decide to run for county commissioner?
Well, I was summoned to the superintendent's office one day, and he wanted to convey to me a message from a sitting county commissioner. We had requested $2,500 from the County Recreation and Parks Department to help us build a concession stand and bathrooms at the softball baseball field complex at Orange High School. The Hillsborough Youth Athletic Association was putting in $2,500. The school athletic fund was putting in $2,500, and we asked the county to put in $2,500 because they used the facilities during the summer. And this one county commissioner told the superintendent to tell me to forget about it. They would not be sending us any money. We were trying to get a place where people could go to the bathroom in a civilized way, have a cup of fresh water or Pepsi or a Coke in a civilized way. And they slammed the door in my face, and I got angry. So, not being one to take no lightly, I said, thank you very much, I know what I'm going to do. He asked me, what are you going to do? I said, well, read the paper. It might be there in a couple of days. I've always had this sense of taking risks. It didn't bother me to do that. And I went downtown. I remembered that filing was open for county commissioner. Took out my checkbook. It cost me $65, I think, and I filed. I figured my mouth was worth several $1,000s, so this was worth taking a shot at. And, you know, I was successful, and I was happy.
So, and did you not have to have a number of signatures and all that to prove?
No.
You just your check?
No,
and
I
signing
was helping a lot of kids and a lot of parents, and I realized early on if you're a teacher or a school administrator who really cares about children, parents remember that. Mm-hmm. If you've harmed their children, they remember that even more. But if you help their children, they'll never forget you. And I found a great deal of support in parents in Central and Northern Orange who appreciated what I was trying to do for their children. And I had done some substitute teaching in the Chapel Hill Carrboro system a couple of years before that, and people knew that I was an educator and knew that I cared about kids and found an immediate following.
So you were elected the first time you ran?
Yeah. And then it happened 4 more times.
Wow.
Then after 20 years, I really felt my flames starting to extinguish. Now, I still have fire in my belly on occasion. For something that gets me hot, I'll get going on it. And I want to see both these senior centers finished, as a matter of fact. I plan to be at the ribbon-cutting ceremonies for both of them when the doors open up, because it took us 20 years to get them.
Right.
And so many of those things that we fought for many, many years, unfortunately, takes a long time in county government, I think in all governments, to get things done that benefit citizens. Rhetoric is quick, rhetoric is inexpensive, but production and results sometimes take decades and takes lots of money. So in this case, I see the Seymour Center going up here in Chapel Hill, and the Central Orange Center will be starting construction pretty soon. And I think that's long overdue. And I came into the county commissionership with very dark hair. And when I left with gray hair. I came in some middle-aged guy, and I left a senior citizen, and I'm proud of it. And but it's made me more sensitive to the issues of aging. I read a while back this article in Newsweek on Billy Graham. And here's a man that people have looked to for many, many years. Now, I didn't particularly agree with everything he said, but I respect him. But he said in that article, it read like he was waiting to pass on, and that no one had taught him how to grow old. He was preaching about dying and death and what kind of life you should live, but never once did he really stop to think about growing old. Well, I've been thinking about growing old quite a bit. And when I realized I had put in 20 years as an elected official, I had spent hundreds. I added up the hours, looking at the number of meetings we have per year as a county commissioner, all the extra boards and commissions we sit on, all the miles I drove back and forth going to meetings. It was well over several hundred days. It was over a year of time of my life that I had given up on the road, in meetings, sometimes debating things endlessly. And if it takes 20 years to get 2 senior centers going in this county, God, there were people that started that movement years ago that are no longer with us. I'm not going to be sitting as an elected official for another 20 years. Somebody else needs to pick up the torch, you know, and the torch has been passed. Now go forth and do some things. Call me if you need some help. I'm more than willing to give you advice. Lots of free advice. I'll never charge for my advice. I think it's the best around. It served me well all these years. So that's been, Florence, the guiding spirit of the whole thing. I've got an undying faith in people, and I believe in helping all people, the very young and those in between, and then the senior citizens on the other end of the spectrum. And of course, every night I speak to the most important senior citizen in my life, my mother. She's 95 years old. She lives in St. Petersburg, Florida, and she's got an opinion on everything. So I guess I know where I got that from.
So now we know where your personality came from.
Oh, absolutely. She's a very animated human being. And when she moved to Florida, and my dad was in failing health, Pinellas County had a lot of services that helped both of them. And that's been sort of my guiding light to see how county government assisted her when she was and still is in Florida, from the park that's near her house that has a walking trail that she would walk that park every day, to county health department services, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what government needs to do. It's to help its citizens, and that's what it's supposed to do.
Well, I think with your leadership and others, like John Link and other members of the commission, you really proved that Orange County is a place where people care about each other.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I've always had a lot of respect for John, and I can tell you, John was very easy to understand issues with aging, with social services, with the health department, and his parents instilled in him the right values. And I think when your parents put those values in you, you can't help but succeed. I know my mother. I came up in a very matriarchal household, and my mother saved my life on several occasions when I did bad things, when my father was ready to sacrifice me to the gods. My mother intervened several times and spared my life. And I'll never forget that. That's the way she's always been. And she's 95. You know, if I can make it to 85, I'll be thankful. If I get to 75, I'll be thrilled. Excuse me. Sure. But that's been a very strong moving force in my life. And she was up here several years ago, and you know, she asked me, "What things are you doing for senior citizens?"
Good.
And I went through the whole list of things, and she nodded approval, and she told me, "I want you to know how proud I am of you.
Oh, that's lovely.
Don't ever forget the old people." She calls them the old people. Don't ever forget us old people. So I had the right upbringing. So any success I've had in life is because I had a wonderful mother and a wonderful father.
It's interesting because I work and interview a lot of older individuals who are frail, like 80 and 90 and so forth. And the one common thing that I find is the influence of the parents.
It's very powerful. And I think that's a very sad thing. I was watching some men pour concrete yesterday, and a middle-aged African-American man who was a wonderful concrete guy was telling me how he was in an environment a few weeks ago, and these kids made some terrible comments about him and his graying hair. And he said to himself, if I was 25 years younger, I'd show you what I could do. And I said to him, I said, you know, they said those things because they don't know any better.
Right.
They said those things because they don't have the right role models. They said those things because they're stupid. I said, now, I hate to use that word, but they're ignorant. And they haven't had the right kind of leadership at home to teach them respect of others. And, you know, I was interested, you know, here we are watching people pour concrete, and we're sharing these societal issues. And I just think that's important because, you know, I consider myself somebody from the Peapod generation. And I have trouble sometimes understanding the iPod generation.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as I'm concerned, I'd rather stick with my Peapods. At least I could eat those
Exactly.
in hard times, you know. And I don't know really what I would do with an iPod. I don't have one, and I don't plan to buy one. And I'm very happy for that. It doesn't bother me at all.
With your experience in the schools, I'm curious, over the years, because you had several years, did you see children change a lot because of family dynamics and
Oh, yeah.
support from parents?
Yeah, I saw people creating children who, in my opinion, didn't know what they were doing. And they didn't take the seriousness of purpose that one should have, I believe, when making a decision to start a family. And I would see troubled kids day in and day out. We had a special team that met every Monday morning, comprised of mental health workers, social workers, the nurses, the guidance counselors, school administrators, any kind of therapeutic person we could get into the mix, we'd have them there to discuss high-risk kids and what kind of plan of action we could have for them to help them be successful. I unfortunately had the experience of being a principal in a rural, predominantly rural high school, of burying about 28 kids in a period of about 30 years. And when you look at those numbers, that's not unusual in North Carolina. The opportunities for kids to die prematurely, as evidenced this past weekend. Wakefield High School has lost 5 kids now in less than a year. We had 1 year there, we lost 3 kids in 1 year at Orange High School. Some of those were suicides, some of those were alcohol and drug related, vehicular accidents, all kinds of strange things. And we had a lot of troubled kids. And you talk to school psychologists and they'll tell you, it's anywhere in the old days, and this is an old statistic I'm citing, 8 to 9% of the kids walking around inside your schoolhouse were in need of serious mental health help. So there's a serious issue out there, and I think maybe people need to start doing more things together as a family and understanding what family was all about. You know, I grew up with a black and white television. We were talking about this the other day. It had a big magnifying screen in front of it to make the picture look bigger.
Right.
Because we were helping some young people move this weekend, and the young man had this huge flat panel TV. I don't have one like that, but he had this huge flat panel TV. And I was saying to myself, you know, this is interesting. This is like, you know, we had to go to the movies in the old days to see something like this. Now people have these screens almost in their homes. So I don't know what they've lost in the transition, but I think there's something missing. The materialistic things are there, but the spiritual things may be lacking.
It's bothersome to think what the future generations will be like if we don't get a handle on this.
Well, I agree, and I think it's a call to arms for people to come together. I grew up in a world when we went to church on Sunday. There was a reverence for the older people because every older person sitting in that church pew had a history behind them. There was a lady who wore black every Sunday because her son was killed in World War II, and she never wore bright clothes again. She always dressed in black. So everybody had a history in that church, and it was a pretty big church. I think that's missing. I think it's gone. Everything is rush, rush, hurry up. I can't stand this text messaging. My own daughter will be text messaging when she's with other people. Even she's driving down the highway and I'm with her and there's a text message coming across. I don't text message. I'll answer my cell phone reluctantly. All right. If you can't get me on a regular phone, send me a card in the mail. You know.
That's now mail.
We got mail delivery 6 days a week. They haven't canceled that yet, so I'm still happy with that. I'm just kind of an old-fashioned person. I don't need to be getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning with text messages.
You've seen the demographics of the county change dramatically, of older people moving here and other people moving here, not just older people, all ages. But it's changing tremendously. What do you think this is doing to the county and the demands for infrastructure changes?
Well, we're going to be playing catching up in many, many areas. And you have to, and I keep on telling people this, you think your taxes are going to go down? They're not.
No.
There's only one way taxes are going is up. The more people move here, the more county services are required, the more regulations come into place, the more stipulations come into place, and you have this whole cadre of government workers continuing to expand. Then you need more schools, and you need more infrastructure, and you need this, and you need that. Anytime you've got a population increase, you're going to have a tax increase. That's all there is to it. They go hand in hand. That's why I marvel. Johnson County, the city fathers and mothers have decided they're going to put a curb on growth. This is interesting. One of the fastest growing counties in the United States. It's out of control. They finally realized this. I've heard them stand up and defend their actions for years that it was good. We learned a long time ago that residential growth, for example, does not pay for itself. Unless you've got a string of $2 million homes and you're collecting high property taxes on them, that doesn't pay for itself. Not when you have to have all of the inspectors in place and more schools and more teachers and more administrators and more public works people. It keeps them going up and up and up. But I was pleased to see the county commissioners at their retreat the other day, what I read in the paper, told the manager they're going to have to look at some kind of hold-the-line budget next year. That, you know, I said over a year ago we were reaching a saturation point. We had two public budget hearings last year, and I had never heard so many people come out and speak against increasing taxes. Well, we had some obligations with respect to already budgeted school construction that we had to go ahead and do. But I think we're going to see some belt tightening in the years ahead. People are getting strapped, and they're coming to the end of their resources. These are people on fixed retirement incomes, and there's so much they can afford. And everybody's going to have to be mindful of that. Now, the screaming will start again in March and April, and the school people will start ranting and raving on both ends of the county that they don't have enough of this and enough of that. Well, you know what? They always did that for the 20 years I was there, and I would say, everything will be fine. No child will be sacrificed. Forget about left behind. We're not throwing any into the tar pits. We're not going to dissolve anybody in a bowl of acid. Everything will be fine. And everything is fine. We've got the two best funded school systems in the state. And the children are doing the best they can. The teachers are doing the best they can. And you never are going to receive everything you've ever wanted. I have never received everything I wanted in life. I'm sure you haven't also. And somehow or other, you're probably happy with what you have. I am. I don't want anything right now.
Actually, you learn the most, I think, when it's difficult.
Absolutely.
If everything goes smoothly and you get everything you want, you're spoiled.
Yeah. And I tell people now, I've gotten to the point in my life that if I wake up in the morning, I'm thrilled. They said, you have a good New Year's? I said, every day is a new year for me. Every day can be Christmas, it can be Hanukkah, it can be anything you want it to be. If you wake up and your feet touch the floor and you got to put some socks or stockings on, consider yourself one of the fortunate few. And that's how you have to look at it. And that's how I look at it. So I'm thankful.
That's a great philosophy. Now, since you've retired from the commission and from the schools, I understand you're redoing a country store. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, this is a pretty cool store. It's 85 years old. It's got huge oak beams that keep the thing standing up that haven't rotted in 85 years. They don't grow wood like that anymore either. And yesterday we just finally poured the new concrete floor inside. And it's kind of really exciting. I'm looking at probably the next 3 or 4 weeks we should be opening up. And it's going to be called the University Station Market. It's at the corner of University Station Road and Highway 70 along the banks of the Eno River heading towards Durham. And it's been in my wife's family for 85 years. It was a grandmother's store. And we're bringing it back in a glorious form. It's going to be bigger and better than ever before. And I can proudly say that we've done all of this using Orange County craftspeople. I have promised the Economic Development Commission that I would do this as a pilot project and do a PowerPoint for them. The carpenter, the plumber, the electrician, the concrete fellow, the vinyl siding guy, they're all Orange County people. The vinyl siding guy, Joe Hendricks, I refer to him as the Michelangelo of vinyl siding. He took this ugly-looking building and has transformed it into this beautiful thing.
He didn't put the Mona Lisa on it.
No, he didn't. But he's got vinyl German siding the way it used to look. And it's just wonderful. And you don't have to paint it. And I used to laugh at stuff like that. Now I see the beauty of it all. So it's really exciting. We're looking forward to it. And the whole neighborhood's excited. It's going to be an uplifting experience for all of us.
And what are you going to have in the store? Is it going to be a mixture of everything? Are you going to have a checkerboard? And
Well, we're going to have a
Cakes and
whole
all
lot of
that.
things. We want to have some benches out front where people can sit down and drink a soft drink beverage and talk about their life experiences. My wife wants to highlight Orange County products. She's putting together a listing of various and sundry items that are made by people in Orange County. And so we're looking at having the traditional stuff, you know, milk and cheese and eggs and beer and wine and all those things that country stores normally sell. So it's going to be a different kind of adventure.
You don't have a sandwich shop or anything
No,
attached to it?
no, because
Just
we're
gonna
out there on a country well in a country septic system. We don't have water and sewer.
Okay, well, we may have to think about running it out there, right?
Well, actually, there's a water line right across the street that Hillsborough built to Durham years ago. So the water is there, but no tap-ons are allowed. But
I
we don't
see.
need it because we got our own well.
Right, so that's not a problem. Well, so your wife is going to run the store along with you?
Well, we're going to start running it together when we first get going. Then we may hire somebody else to do it because the trick was to go out and be able to do some travel and see the world a little bit.
Have you thoughts about where you want to travel?
Well, I've been to Europe several times. I've been to Latin America a few times. There's some other places we want to go to. We've been to Hawaii. And there's some places in Europe we want to get to. And we'll see where all that pans out. I'm happy to go to Mebane and come back at night. I can say that I went west.
I want to encourage you to go to Australia and New Zealand.
Well, we're thinking of that, too.
I was there a year ago, fall, for 5 weeks.
Ah.
It's incredibly marvelous countries. New Zealand particularly, I think you'd really, if you've been to Scotland, it's a Scotland-type country. And, you know, the rural part and the people and the outback in Australia was wonderful, too. Just the whole situation. It's a trip that's very long and arduous, but it was wonderful.
Well, that's great.
So think about it.
We will.
Good. Any other places that you're thinking about?
Well, we bought a place up in the mountains a couple of years ago, and it's nice to get away up there. Actually, it's like a throwback in time, but things are changing up there, too, now. Everybody's moving in from Florida and New Jersey and New York, so we may have to sell it and get further into the woods. I don't know. It all depends how it goes. But people are discovering North Carolina.
Oh, they're coming in droves.
And that's right. They're coming not only to Orange County, but they're coming into the mountains. They're coming into the coastal areas. And North Carolina is a good buy for a lot of these people. They can get a whole lot more real estate for their money coming out of the northeast of Florida than they can in those states.
Yeah. Steve, we've been delighted to have you with
Well,
us.
thank you for
I'm afraid we've
having
run out
me.
of time.
Well, thank
Maybe
you.
we'll come back another time.
Anytime, let me know.
We'll find out where you went beyond Mebane.
Sounds good.
Thank you for joining us.
There's a myth going round town that when you get older you just sit down and start rocking. Just rocking. In a way that's true, if you know what I mean. Just take a look at the senior scene. Well, it's rocking. Yeah, it's rocking. We're pulling our weight, learning the code, clicking our heels, sharing the load, and every so often we're hitting the road. Yeah, we're rocking.